2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports could lose their charters as soon as next week. And even though NASCAR is returning to tracks like Bowman Gray Stadium next year, has the Chicago Street Race officially run its course? How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Talking NASCAR. I'm your host, Andrew. Episode 17, Matt Kenseth's number when he was at that with Roush. Making more number associations with the episode number, so nice. In all serious, though, we have a couple stories to break down today, starting with some big news today about the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series schedule. Bowman Gray will once again be the site of the Clash. I'm, of course, referring to Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and they were the host of this year's Busch Clash. Is it technically still sponsored by Busch anymore? It might be sponsored by Cookout now. I might be totally wrong about that, but either way, this year was hosted by the Bowman Gray Stadium, which NASCAR seized the rights to late in the fall last year, and NASCAR will continue to operate there next season in the form of next year's Clash. I just looked it up. Cookout is the title sponsor for the Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium, so I guess it's no longer it's no longer the Busch Light Clash. It's the Cookout Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium. That rolls off the tongue better, though. I do like the Busch Light Clash at Bowman Gray. It does sound good. The Busch Light Clash at Bowman Gray sounds good, but either way, the Clash will be returning to Bowman Gray Stadium next year, and I'm happy about that. I thought Bowman Gray Stadium put on some really good short track racing. It's a smaller short track, kind of enclosed with a really interesting infield, no walls separating the track from the infield, with some drains still on the outside, which adds a little bit of an element. We saw cars kind of trying to get some more grip by kind of running over those drains, to be honest, but it was kind of cool. And then the walls, the grandstands, the concrete grandstands with them kind of jutting out into the racing surface, I thought it was a little cool. I mean, you can't obviously move those from the stadium, kind of push them back, but overall, though, I thought the Madhouse put on some really good racing last year. Honestly, I think that the Madhouse put on probably the best short track racing that we saw this year, or seen this year, sorry, improper grammar. But Bowman Gray Stadium had two wide racing, side-by-side passing. It was really good, and we saw a little bit of carnage with Burt Myers getting wrecked by Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the heat races. Garrett Smithley got spun. We saw Ty Gibbs turn into an Eagle after launching himself off of Justin Haley's Fraternal Order of the Eagles number 7 car in that race. So that was always kind of fun. But yeah, I'm excited that Bowman Gray Stadium will once again host the Cookout Clash. Man, I'm so caught up from the Busch Light Clash at the Coliseum, the LA Coliseum, that ended a couple years ago. I'm really happy that NASCAR is getting back towards the more grassroots side of racing. For a while, they've been pushing kind of out towards the city and bringing the market or the racing to the people. And we've seen that more recently with the Chicago Street Race. They did it in the LA Memorial Coliseum, kind of stuffing a NASCAR track and paving over the football field in a quarter-mile oval. And that's not to say Bowman Gray is much different, but overall, though, I feel like going back to a grassroots track, it feels better. It's nicknamed the Madhouse because literally it went mad back in the old ARCA and late model races back in the day. And now that we got NASCAR and racing back in there, it just feels right to have racing in the Madhouse instead of football. But I'm really excited to see that Bowman Gray Stadium is back on the schedule for the Clash. I'm not sure that Bowman Gray Stadium really would be the best site for a points race, but I think for exhibition races, it's a perfect place. It's a small track. It has some historic value, holds some nostalgia for some of the older grassroots fans that know their way around the NASCAR circuit. So I think it's a good move by NASCAR, and I'm happy to see Bowman Gray Stadium back on the schedule for next season. Now, I did just mention that NASCAR has been looking to bring the product to the people, and one of the best examples of that is the more recent Chicago Street Race. And the reason I want to talk about this is about the long-term or future of the Chicago Street Race, because this is the final year of a 3-year deal NASCAR had with the city of Chicago to put on the Chicago Street Race. And so far, the Chicago Street Race in its 3 years hasn't been bad. I mean, the first 2 years were kind of derailed by rain. The first year, there was crazy amounts of flooding in the Chicago area around the Chicago River. And then overall, you had the last year with the race getting shortened due to rain. And then you had this year with rain that started pretty much right after the checkered flag. I mean, the Chicago Street Race cannot escape weather, but overall, the racing product itself wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. I mean, once it got really flung out into single file racing, it kind of got a little boring, and there was only a couple drivers that really were able to make their way up through the field, like Shane Van Gisbergen, AJ Allmendinger, some of the road course ringers. And I will say, during the rain, though, it added another element of kind of passing and making the drivers unsettled when they were running. I mean, we saw Kyle Larson and Shane Van Gisbergen get wrecked and run into the tire barrier, and even Cody Ware run into the tire barrier last year. Now, there's also a bunch of logistical conversations about the Chicago Street Race. One, the streets of Chicago are narrow as anything in any city, and that was proven by Carson Hocevar trying to get too much out of turn 10, and he ended up wrecking himself, hitting the wall, and there was nowhere to go. It was a parking lot on, I forget what street it was, but it was at turn 10, pretty much. I'm not going to try to name the street. And the streets overall were just very, very narrow, and that poses a logistical problem. Now, the other thing is when around, I would say, lap 60, there was a caution for an ambulance having to make their way across the track to the infield because, according to essentialsports.com, there was a ambulance that needed to get to the infield because apparently there was some street racing going on outside of the track, not in the track, because NASCAR being in the streets of Chicago, that isn't illegal street racing, right? Right? In all seriousness, no, this was actual illegal street racing outside of the racetrack, of course, and two street racers accidentally hit a innocent bystander trying to persuade them to deter from their illegal activities, but that ended up forcing an ambulance to be called, and the nearest hospital or medical attention seeking area was in the infield of the Chicago Street Race. So they had to shut down the race and pull out a caution so the cars wouldn't be coming full speed while an ambulance was trying to cross the track to get that man some care. So I'm hoping that man is okay. We haven't gotten really any updates. I'm hoping and praying that he is okay, but being that the Chicago Street Race wrapped up a couple days ago, I would suspect that he either one got transferred to another hospital and seeking much better care, or two, he is in stable condition and he has been discharged, but I haven't gotten any real-time information about that. Now, in this article, Essential Sports did capture some fans saying that this isn't something you would see at a normal racetrack like Richmond. This has happened before where a fan needed to be brought into the infield care center via an ambulance. And in Richmond, there is a tunnel which allows the teams to be able to, the ambulance to travel under the racetrack. And several other tracks have tunnels, like Pocono, the tunnel turn. There's a tunnel there to allow cars and other pedestrian vehicles to go under the racing surface and get to the infield. And the Chicago Street Race doesn't have that. They can't go below the streets of Chicago, otherwise they'd be running through the sewer system. And I can only imagine what things may be in the sewer system if they were to try to bring cars through under the racing surface and continue traffic as normal. So you can obviously see the logistical things and logistical challenges of the Chicago Street Race, and combine that with the on-track performance being subpar or mid, as I would say, to capture the attention of younger viewers. Those all pair together to ask the question, has the Chicago Street Race run its course? Now, personally, I don't think the Chicago Street Race is a bad race. I don't think it's a race that needs to stay on the schedule. And I think there are several other tracks that are already in place, like Road America, for example, up in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. Now, I'm, of course, a little biased because I live in Wisconsin, and I would love to see the Cup Series and NASCAR return to Road America. And a couple weeks ago, or months maybe, the president of Road America said that he wanted NASCAR to return and was actively looking to bring NASCAR back. And NASCAR may not be looking at Road America and saying, yeah, we'll want to return there, because NASCAR has raced at Road America before, and with the current next-gen road course package and road course racing product, maybe it's not the best solution or best option right now. NASCAR has also looked at San Diego for a street race as well. I don't know how the streets of San Diego really compare to the streets of Chicago. I can tell you this. I think that there will be better weather out there in San Diego and California compared to the streets of Chicago in the Midwest. But I honestly think that NASCAR, with also having the downside of making this race, putting this race on at a deficit, because they put more money into the race, the Chicago Street Race, and make less money out of it. And I'm pretty sure by now, I haven't looked at actual kind of demographics and analytics to show whether NASCAR has gained viewership or gained attendance from the 3 years of being in Chicago, but I can't imagine it's been crazy high increases if there have been increases, and I can't imagine they have been crazy low decreases if there have been decreases. But getting back to the original question, does the Chicago Street Race, has it run its course? I think the Chicago Street Race, it's a good race, but it's not a track that needs to stay on the schedule. And I think at this point, with the amount of road courses NASCAR has at its disposal, with, for example, Road America, we've seen them go to Mexico City. The Mid Ohio Sports Car Course in Mid Ohio is certainly an option as well. And there's several other road courses and other tracks they can look to run at. I mean, I can name a couple other tracks in Wisconsin. Well, one at least that NASCAR would want to run on is the Milwaukee Mile. I think it would be great to see NASCAR back in the Milwaukee Mile because they were back in 2022 and 2023, or excuse me, 2022 and 2024. But it would be really cool to see NASCAR back at the Mile or Road America or at Mid Ohio or Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. I said park there for a second. Or you could have them go to Montreal. That's another circuit that is already in place, and you don't have NASCAR going out to Chicago and setting a bunch of walls, concrete walls, guardrails, boundaries, and closing off the streets. Like, you don't need to do that. Now, I can only imagine how much money the streets of San Diego would need to put on a race there, but at this point, NASCAR might as well try it. It's better weather out there, but I think that putting a street race on there and bringing the product to the people, I haven't seen enough to say that it's a working idea. We haven't seen it work with the Chicago Street Race that much, and maybe in San Diego, the Southern California market, things will change. Maybe more viewership will go up. Maybe fan attendance will go up. But realistically, I don't see the Chicago Street Race being a feasible option next year. And I also predict that NASCAR will not want to go to Chicago once again. Chicago is open to NASCAR returning, but probably with a different date, not 4th of July weekend. And I don't know if NASCAR can really make that work because it's July. Really, you got the playoffs coming up, and you really don't want to spend that kind of money around the playoffs and make it such a, I guess, variable track. I don't think NASCAR would want to do that, especially in the playoffs or late in the regular season. Maybe like 2 weeks later, maybe flip like Sonoma or like Watkins Glen. Maybe you can shuffle the schedule around, but it's kind of hard to do that. And at this point, it just doesn't seem worth it to continue going back to Chicago at this point. And Chicagoland Speedway is an oval that is an hour outside of Chicago, granted, but it's another track that is in the Chicago media area. It's in the market of Chicago. And I would love to see NASCAR return, especially in the Cup Series with the next gens running at intermediates at 1.5 mile ovals. I think it'd be really good to see Chicagoland Speedway return to NASCAR in the Cup Series. And Carson Hocevar actually posted a video on his YouTube channel showing that, or actually was touring the track. And the track doesn't look bad. The asphalt, the racing surface definitely isn't in the best condition, but it still looks like the track overall has been maintained. There's a little bit of overgrowth, I should say, not a lot. The grandstands still look really, really good. The tunnels definitely need a little bit of cleaning, but overall, everything at Chicagoland Speedway still looks pretty solid. And I think returning to Chicagoland Speedway is a really good option, and it's a definitely attainable option. And I would love to see NASCAR return there, but let me know down in the comments, do you think the Chicago Street Race should be continuing to be a date on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule? Do you think NASCAR should head to another street race in San Diego, or should they go to Road America, for example, or another track that I may be forgetting about. So let me know down in the comments what you think. Now, moving on, we have some news about the lawsuit. Yes, NASCAR is back in session. I guess I better put on my suit and tie that you guys totally can't see right now for this occasion. I would just like to say real quick, I am not a legal expert. I am probably not the best at translating this information. I am just going off of what is said in different sources, and I'm just relaying it to you. Today, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals denied the request made by 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports to rehear on the appeal that NASCAR made on the preliminary injunction that the teams sought early in the year so they could race as charter teams. Essentially, what I'm saying is NASCAR a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago appealed the preliminary injunction ruling made by a Judge Kenneth Bell back in, I believe it was January, before the Daytona 500, which allowed the teams to race as chartered teams under the current charter agreement without the clause that was included in this year's current charter agreement that you can't sue us, NASCAR. The teams cannot sue NASCAR, and the teams did not want to do that, but they still wanted to be able to race with the same financial benefits while not having to abide by the rule of you can't sue NASCAR. However, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals said, no, that is not the right way to do this. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. So they overturned that ruling, which NASCAR appealed the ruling of the preliminary injunction, and the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals granted the appeal or overturned the original ruling, which means the teams should have lost their charters and would not be able to run as chartered teams at the end or by the weekend of Atlanta. So that was 2 weeks ago. And finally, the hearing was heard, or the decision was made. And so now that 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports have lost their preliminary injunction, they can lose their charters or no longer be racing as charter teams in NASCAR by Dover weekend. So that means next weekend, 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports could lose their charters next weekend for the race at Dover. Now, that does not mean 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports are eliminated from the driver point standings. All they have to do is show up and attempt to qualify for every one of the next Cup races all the way up through Championship weekend, which is planned by 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports. So as long as Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace make every single race and qualify for every single race, they'll probably make the playoffs and be able to run in the playoffs for the next couple months. What losing their charters could do immediately is they will not receive the same payout as the charter teams would, because I'm pretty sure Bob Proctor said that unchartered entries, when they finish races, only receive less than a third of the payout charter teams would. So that means that Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, Bob Jenkins, their pockets would take a severe hit. So that's a pretty big, I would say, immediate impact. Now, NASCAR doesn't have to do this. They could simply let everything be and let 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports keep their charters for the rest of the season. But we all know that NASCAR probably won't do that. They'll probably revoke their charters and repossess them, as I would say. So next weekend at Dover, NASCAR probably will have control of 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports charters, and they can do whatever they want with them. They can keep them, they can sell them to other teams, which would be huge for both 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports. Now, this doesn't affect the greater lawsuit, like I've said in the past. The trial date is still set for December 1st, and as Jeffrey Kessler says, quote, the attorney for both teams, quote, we are disappointed by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals decision to deny our request for a full rehearing. This decision has no bearing on the strength of our antitrust case, which we look forward to presenting at trial. We are committed to racing this season as we continue to fight for more competitive and fair team terms for all teams to ensure the future of the sport and remain fully confident in our case. That statement was taken by Dustin Long on X, so go check it out if you want to see for yourself. So yeah, this has no bearing on the overall antitrust case, and Jeffrey Kessler seems like this doesn't affect their current racing plans for the rest of the season, and it does not affect the rest of their antitrust case and plans as well. So yeah, that's some pretty big news. All that the teams will really take in this decision is They probably will not receive the same amount of payout money from every single race for the next few months, and this could put their team plans and team futures up in the air. I mean, contracts wise for drivers, Tyler Reddick, I believe, for 23 Open Racing, in his contract, it says that the team he races for needs to have a charter for him to race. Otherwise, he can just walk. Same with sponsorship contracts for both teams. They probably have some clauses in there about whether being full-time chartered entries or not. So that's some pretty big stuff that those teams will have to work around. Now, of course, if the teams and NASCAR were to come to a settlement before the trial and kind of work everything out and maybe come to a medium about this, maybe all of this kind of gets thrown out the window and we still see 23 Urban Racing and Front Row Motorsports remain in NASCAR while maybe something else gets drawn up, like a new charter agreement. But at this rate, it doesn't seem like it. Otherwise, we probably would have seen that settlement come through sooner. Or if the teams do end up winning at trial in December, some of the damage I would likely expect to be the teams get their charters back, they receive some money from NASCAR as part of damages, and probably a whole host of other things. So there's that. There's a whole bunch of stuff that can happen. Again, this injunction and this news really has no full bearing on the lawsuit overall. It really just impacts 23 Urban Racing and Front Row Motorsports' immediate future on the track and possible future in the offseason with drivers and sponsors. So we'll see what this does to the teams. Does the 23 Urban Racing and Front Row Motorsports performance drop on track? And I would say this year, it already has dropped on track compared to last year. So we'll just have to wait and see. But let me know in the comments what you think about this news. Is this stuff entertaining to you guys, or are you guys just whatever about it and you really don't care? So let me know down in the comments. Again, let me know if you think Chicago should remain on the 2026 schedule for the Cup Series, if maybe a new track like San Diego Street Race or Elkhart Lake or Mid-Ohio should return to the NASCAR Cup Series schedule next season. Let me know down in the comments, and that's all I got for you guys. Leave a like if you are listening on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel if you're also listening on YouTube. If you're listening to us for the first time on Spotify, give us a follow. Same on Apple Podcasts. We are doing pretty well as a show, and I'm hoping that you guys will continue to return. We talk about NASCAR fairly often throughout the week. I'm kind of sporadic, I don't say I'm going to be around every single day, but I plan to react to the big breaking news and then, of course, react to the most recent NASCAR Cup Series races every Sunday and post a video with power rankings next day on Monday. So that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next episode. Have a great day, y'all.